Close your eyes and let the weight of the modern world dissolve. Tonight you are not scrolling through apocalypse predictions on social media. You're not bracing for the next catastrophic headline. Tonight you are stepping back through layers of time and myth to uncover a truth so strange that it exists in two completely different realities at once. This is the story of Nibiru. But it is not the story you think you know. Before we journey deeper into this mystery, take a moment to ignite that like button if you're enjoying what you hear. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. These videos are designed so the visuals add context but aren't necessary to follow along. Now settle in, let the world fade away and prepare yourself for what lies ahead. The year is 1976. Disco dominates the airwaves. America is celebrating its bicentennial. And in a quiet corner of the publishing world, a book appears that will reshape how millions of people understand human history. The book is called The 12th Planet. Its author is a man named Sitchin, a Russian-born journalist with a passion for ancient languages and a mind that refuses to accept conventional boundaries. Sitchin's central claim is audacious. He states that humanity did not evolve naturally on Earth. We were engineered, created by an advanced extraterrestrial race called the Anunnaki, who arrived here from a mysterious planet called Nibiru, a world that swings through our solar system on a vast elliptical orbit once every 3 some years. According to Sitchin, these beings came to Earth 450,000 years ago searching for gold. They needed it to repair their failing atmosphere. They established mining operations, and when their workers revolted from the brutal labour, they took a native hominid, Homo erectus, and spliced it with their own DNA. The result was us, Homo sapiens. We were not made in God's image through divine love. We were made in an alien laboratory as biological machines. Slaves designed to dig precious metal from the ground. The theory exploded into popular consciousness. Sitchin's book sold millions of copies. They were translated into over 25 languages. They spawned television documentaries, internet forums, and an entire subculture convinced that mainstream science and archaeology were hiding the truth. The name Nibiru became synonymous with ancient astronaut theory, with secret knowledge, with the terrifying possibility that our creators might one day return. But here is where the story splits into two irreconcilable paths. The first path is the one Sitchin created, a sprawling science fiction epic dressed in the language of scholarship. The second path is far older and far stranger. It leads back 4,000 years to clay tablets pressed by scribes in ancient Mesopotamia, to a word that meant something completely different, to an astronomical concept that had nothing to do with alien visitors or planetary catastrophe. Let your mind drift, now across centuries, across the dusty plains of what is now Iraq. You are standing in ancient Babylon. The year is approximately 1000 BCE. The night sky above you is impossibly clear, unpolluted by electric light. The stars blaze with an intensity modern eyes can barely imagine. You are an astronomer priest. Your life's work is to map the heavens, to track the wandering stars, the planets, to understand the cosmic order that governs all things. In your temple you keep careful records on clay tablets. You note when Venus rises. You chart Jupiter's path through the constellations. You calculate the cycles of the moon with mathematical precision that will not be matched for another 1,000 years. And in your most sacred texts you speak of Nibiru. But when you write that word, you are not describing a rogue planet from the outer darkness. You are marking a crossing point. The word itself comes from the Akkadian root meaning to cross. Nibiru is the ferry, the ford, the place of transition. It is a celestial marker, a fixed point in the sky that holds the cosmic order together. The most important text mentioning Nibiru is the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic. This is not fringe literature or controversial translation. This is mainstream Assyriology, studied in universities across the world. The epic tells of how the god Marduk rose to power by defeating Tiamat, the primordial dragon of chaos. After his victory, Marduk arranges the cosmos. He sets the stars and planets in their proper stations, and he establishes Nibiru as the celestial anchor point. The text states, he set up the station of Nibiru to determine their celestial bands so that none could transgress or fall short. Read that again carefully. Nibiru's function is to ensure regularity and order, to prevent the celestial bodies from straying from their paths. This is the opposite of a chaotic intruder. This is cosmic stability incarnate. In Babylonian religion, Nibiru is directly associated with Marduk himself, the star of Marduk. And since Marduk's planetary counterpart was unequivocally Jupiter, the largest and most majestic planet in our system, the scholarly consensus is clear. When the Babylonians spoke of Nibiru, they were most often referring to Jupiter, specifically to Jupiter when it reached the celestial equator, the crossing point between the northern and southern halves of the sky, the ferry between the realms, but certainty in ancient astronomy is elusive. Some texts appear to use Nibiru to describe Mercury. Others seem to reference a specific star that marked the equinox. The term evolved over centuries as religious and astronomical understanding deepened. What is absolutely certain from careful analysis of hundreds of cuneiform tablets is this: nowhere in authentic Mesopotamian literature is Nibiru described as a planet with a 3,600-year elliptical orbit. Nowhere is it home to alien beings. Nowhere is it associated with Earth's creation through planetary collision. These ideas appear for the first time not in ancient Sumer but in 1976, in the mind of Zechariah Sitchin, Dr. Michael Heiser, who holds a PhD in Hebrew Bible and ancient Semitic languages from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, conducted a comprehensive analysis of every known cuneiform text mentioning Nibiru. His findings, published in peer-reviewed format, are unambiguous. The term Nibiru in ancient astronomical context refers to four things: Jupiter, Mercury, the god Marduk, and occasionally a specific star. That is the complete list. No hidden planet, no ancient astronauts, no 3,600-year cycle of destruction. So how did we get from the actual Babylonian Nibiru, a term for Jupiter's role as cosmic regulator, to Sitchin's Nibiru, home world of our alien creators, to understand that we must examine not just what Sitchin claimed, but how he claimed it? Sitchin presented himself as one of the few people capable of reading ancient Sumerian and Akkadian. He stated that mainstream scholars were either too blind or too complicit to see what the text truly said. But when experts in Mesopotamian languages examined his work, they found something troubling. Sitchin's translations were not unconventional. They were often simply wrong, at a fundamental level. Take the word Anunnaki. In authentic Sumerian and Akkadian it means princely offspring or those of royal blood. It refers to the principal deities of the Sumerian pantheon, the children of the sky god Anu. But Sitchin translated it as those who from heaven to earth came. This translation appears nowhere in scholarly literature. It seems to have been invented whole cloth to support his alien astronaut theory. Every subsequent use of this translation in ancient astronaut literature traces back not to Sumerian dictionaries compiled by scribes, but to Sitchin's books. The word Nephilim from the Hebrew Bible provides another example. Sitchin claimed it meant people of the fiery rockets or those who descended from above. But biblical Hebrew scholars point out that Nephilim comes from the root word nephal, meaning to fall. In context, it most likely refers to giants or fallen ones. Nothing about spacecraft, nothing about descent from the stars. Then there is the infamous cylinder seal VA-243. Sitchin claimed this 4,500-year-old artifact depicted our solar system with 12 bodies, including Nibiru. The seal shows several seated figures, and above them, a star symbol with dots around it. To Sitchin, these dots were planets, proof that the Sumerians knew our complete solar system, including an extra member. But experts in Sumerian art point out several fatal flaws. First, the Sumerians used different symbols for the sun and for stars. The symbol on VA-243 is the standard star symbol found on hundreds of seals, not the sun. Second, if you actually count the dots carefully, there are not 12. The number varies depending on how you interpret the damaged portions of the seal. Third, the seal's actual cuneiform inscription has been translated. It reads, Dubsiga Ili Ilat, your servant. It is an offering seal, a dedication to a deity. The star symbol above the deity's head is a marker of divinity, distinguishing gods from mortals. This is a common motif in Mesopotamian art, not a star chart. Dr. Peter James, co-author of Centuries of Darkness, stated, Sitchin wholly misunderstands Sumerian, Assyrian and Babylonian literature. He uses the epic of creation as the foundation for his cosmogony, identifying the young god Marduk as the unknown 12th planet. To do this, he interprets the theogony as a factual account of the birth of the other 11 planets. The Babylonian names for the planets are established beyond a shadow of a doubt. Ishtar was Venus, Nergal were Mars, Marduk was Jupiter. This is confirmed by hundreds of astronomical tables and treatises on clay tablets from the Hellenistic period. Sitchin's entire theoretical edifice rests on linguistic foundations that crumble under even basic scrutiny. Yet his ideas have proven remarkably resilient. Why? Perhaps because they offer something academia cannot: a grand unified narrative, a simple answer to humanity's deepest questions. Who are we? Why are we here? Are we alone? Sitchin's theory provides resolution. We are the products of genetic engineering. We are here to serve a purpose, even if that purpose was exploitative. And we are not alone. We have creators, dysfunctional perhaps, exploitative certainly, but creators nonetheless. His narrative also feeds a growing distrust of authority. Sitchin painted mainstream science as either blind to obvious truth or actively suppressing it. This conspiracy angle became inseparable from the Nibiru myth. The scholars who reject the theory are not acting in good faith according to believers. They are gatekeepers. They are part of the cover-up. But set aside Sitchin for a moment. Set aside bad translations and invented evidence. Ask a different question. Is there any legitimate scientific search for a hidden planet in our solar system? The answer is yes. But the real story is far more complex and far more fascinating than ancient astronaut theories suggest. In January 2016, astronomers Konstantin Batygin and Mike Brown from Caltech announced something extraordinary. Using mathematical modelling and computer simulations, they presented compelling evidence for a massive undiscovered planet in the outer solar system. They called it Planet 9. Not because they were courting Sitchin's followers, but because with Pluto's demotion to dwarf planet status, the solar system officially had only 8 planets. If this new world existed, it would be the 9th. The evidence Batygin and Brown presented was not based on ancient texts or cylinder seals. It was based on something undeniable: gravity. Far beyond Neptune, in the frozen wasteland of the Kuiper Belt, astronomers had discovered a population of distant icy objects. Small worlds with orbits that took them hundreds of astronomical units from the Sun. An astronomical unit is the distance from Earth to the Sun. Neptune orbits at about 30 AU. These extreme trans-Neptunian objects, or ETNOs, orbit at 250 AU and beyond. Here is what was strange. 6 of the most distant ETNOs had orbits that were eerily similar. Their orbital paths all tilted at approximately the same angle relative to the rest of the solar system, and the point of their closest approach to the Sun, called the perihelion, all clustered in the same general direction in space. Imagine walking into a forest and finding 10 trees all bent in exactly the same direction. You would immediately know that some powerful force had been acting on them. Wind, landslide, something. The same logic applies in space. If these orbits are randomly distributed, the odds of 6 clustering like this by pure chance are less than 0.007%. Something massive is shepherding them. Batygin and Brown ran thousands of computer simulations. The only model that reproduced the observed clustering required a large planet. A super-Earth with a mass between 5 and 10 times that of our world. This planet would orbit on a highly elongated path, taking it from about 200 astronomical units at its closest approach to perhaps 200 AU at its farthest. A single orbit would take between 10,000 and 20,000 years. This is nothing like Sitchin's Nibiru. The timescales are wrong. The proposed orbit is 3 to 6 times longer than the 3,600-year cycle Sitchin claimed. The planet is not passing through the inner solar system between Mars and Jupiter. It is lurking in the distant darkness far beyond Pluto. It never comes anywhere near Earth. But the mathematical evidence is compelling. In 2019, Batygin and Brown published updated models refining their predictions. They concluded Planet 9 might be closer and smaller than initially thought. Perhaps 5 times Earth's mass, orbiting at around 400 to 500 AU. More importantly, their model made testable predictions. They predicted the existence of objects on orbits perpendicular to the plane of the solar system. These would be ETNOs whose orbits had been tilted 90 degrees by Planet 9's gravitational influence. And astronomers found them, 5 objects fitting this precise prediction. Then their model predicted a population of closer-in objects between Jupiter and Neptune that had been captured by Planet 9's gravity and were being slowly pulled inward. In 2024, Brown reported finding exactly this population with the predicted characteristics. Each successful prediction strengthens the hypothesis, but not everyone is convinced. In 2021, a team led by Kevin Napier at the University of Michigan published a paper arguing that the apparent clustering of ethno-orbits might be an artifact of observational bias. Astronomers can only search certain parts of the sky at certain times. If they happen to be looking in one direction more often than others, they might artificially create the appearance of clustering when none truly exists. This critique was taken seriously. Battigan and Brown responded by conducting more detailed statistical analysis controlling for observational bias. They concluded the clustering is real and statistically significant, but the debate continues. This is how science is supposed to work. Hypothesis, evidence, counter-evidence, refinement, testing, not ancient texts and mystical revelation, but math and data and telescopes. The most exciting development is imminent. The Vera C. Rubin Observatory in Chile, with its 8.4-metre telescope and 3 billion pixel camera, is scheduled to begin full operations soon. It will conduct the legacy survey of space and time, photographing the entire available sky every few nights. If Planet 9 exists and is above a certain brightness threshold, the Rubin Observatory will find it. Within years, we may have our answer. Either confirmation of a real ninth planet supported by direct observation or evidence that the orbital anomalies have another explanation. But there is a strange coda to this story, a way in which legitimate science and fringe speculation intersect in the public mind. The scientific hunt for Planet 9 and the ancient astronaut theory of Nibiru have become confused, conflated. Online forums and YouTube videos often present them as the same thing, as if Battigan and Brown's work somehow validates Sitchin's claims. This is a category error. Planet 9, if it exists, is a natural object, a planet likely captured during the solar system's formation or ejected into a distant orbit by gravitational interactions with Jupiter and Saturn billions of years ago. It is not inhabited. It is not on a 300-year cycle. It is not coming back to wreak havoc. It is not Nibiru in any meaningful sense of that word. The fact that both theories involve a hidden planet is where the similarity ends. One is based on mathematical evidence and gravitational physics. The other is based on mistranslated ancient texts and a desire to believe we are not alone. Yet conspiracy theories thrive on these ambiguities. Some proponents have suggested that Battigan and Brown's announcement is itself a form of soft disclosure. The governments have known about Nibiru for decades and are using mainstream astronomers to slowly prepare the public for the truth. The real Nibiru, they claim, is closer than Planet 9, its orbit is shorter, and its return is imminent. Let us examine these conspiracy theories directly, because they reveal something profound about why the Nibiru myth has proven so durable. The conspiracy narrative goes like this. In 1983, NASA launched the Infrared Astronomical Satellite, IRAS. This was a real mission. It conducted the first comprehensive infrared survey of the night sky. On December 30th, 1983, the Washington Post ran an article with the headline, "Possibly as large as Jupiter, mystery heavenly body discovered." The article quoted scientists from the IRAS team discussing an unknown infrared source in the direction of the constellation Orion. The chief IRAS scientist was quoted saying, "All I can tell you is that we don't know what it is. For conspiracy theorists, this was the smoking gun." IRAS had found Nibiru, but the next day the story was retracted. Officials stated the object was just a distant galaxy. For believers, this was not a correction. It was damage control, a cover-up initiated at the highest levels to prevent global panic. But the actual facts of the IRAS mission tell a different story. The satellite did detect thousands of infrared sources. This was its purpose. Most were identified through follow-up observations as distant galaxies, nebulae, or other mundane astronomical objects. The specific 1983 detection mentioned in the Post article was later determined to be an ultraluminous infrared galaxy, a type of galaxy undergoing intense star formation that emits primarily in infrared wavelengths. This is documented in peer-reviewed publications. No conspiracy, no hidden planet, just science doing what science does, observing, analysing, explaining. Another conspiracy figure looms large in Nibiru mythology. Robert Harrington was the chief astronomer at the United States Naval Observatory in the late 80s and early 90s. He was among the few mainstream astronomers to take the search for Planet X seriously. He published papers suggesting a massive planet beyond Pluto was responsible for orbital perturbations of Uranus and Neptune. He even calculated a potential location for it in the southern sky. Then in 1993, at the age of 50, Robert Harrington died suddenly from esophageal cancer. Conspiracy theorists seized on this timing. Harrington was about to present major findings. He was getting too close to the truth, and he was silenced. But the reality is more mundane and more tragic. Harrington's work was legitimate astronomy, but it was based on data that was later shown to be flawed. When Voyager 2 conducted close flybys of Uranus and Neptune in the 80s, it measured their masses far more precisely than had been possible from Earth. It turned out both planets were slightly less massive than previously thought. When corrected masses were plugged into orbital calculations, the anomalies Harrington was studying disappeared. There was no longer any evidence that a massive planet was perturbing their orbits. Harrington's death, though tragically premature, was from natural causes. Esophageal cancer strikes many people with no connection to planetary astronomy. His research was not silenced by shadowy forces, it was superseded by better data. This is how science progresses. Yet the conspiracy persists because it offers narrative satisfaction. The lone truth seeker silenced before revealing the hidden knowledge. It is the stuff of fiction, and in the absence of direct evidence, it can never be completely falsified. This is the genius and the danger of conspiracy thinking. But there is a deeper psychological layer to the Nibiru myth that deserves exploration. Why does this particular conspiracy theory resonate so powerfully? What need does it fulfill? In an age of unprecedented connectivity and information access, we face a paradox. We know more about the universe than any generation in human history, yet many feel increasingly alienated from cosmic significance. Science tells us we are the products of random mutation and natural selection, that we exist on an unremarkable planet orbiting an average star in the outer suburbs of a galaxy that is one of hundreds of billions, that the universe is vast and cold and indifferent to our existence. For many people, this is unsatisfying at best and existentially terrifying at worst. The Nibiru myth offers an alternative narrative. It tells us we are not random. We were designed. We have creators. Even if those creators were exploitative and imperfect, they had a purpose for us. It tells us we are not alone. Our cosmic family is still out there. The Anunnaki may return, humanity might be judged or rescued or enlightened or destroyed, but we matter. We are part of a grand cosmic drama that stretches back hundreds of thousands of years. This is profoundly appealing. It re-enchants the universe. It replaces cold randomness with intentional design. It promises meaning. The Nibiru myth also feeds on legitimate anxiety about catastrophic risk. In our modern age, we are acutely aware of existential threats. Climate change, nuclear war, pandemic, asteroid impact. We know from the geological record that Earth has suffered catastrophic events in the past. Mass extinctions, climate upheavals. The evidence is carved into the rock, and we know these things can happen again. The Nibiru myth takes this diffuse anxiety and gives it a specific form, a face, a name, a timetable. The catastrophe is not vague and unpredictable. It is Nibiru. It returns every 600 years, and if we know the cycle, we can prepare, or at least we can understand. This transforms existential dread into something more manageable. There is a reason. There is a pattern. We are not victims of random chaos, but participants in a cosmic cycle. Which brings us to one of the strangest intersections between myth and science. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. This is legitimate scientific research into a real climatic anomaly, and it demonstrates that Earth has indeed suffered catastrophic bombardment from space within the time frame of human civilization. About 12,800 years ago, near the end of the last ice age, something dramatic happened. The Earth had been gradually warming for several thousand years as the great ice sheets retreated. Then suddenly the climate reversed. Temperatures in the northern hemisphere plummeted. Some regions experienced drops of 15 degrees Celsius in less than a decade. This cold snap lasted approximately 100 years. Then just as abruptly, warming resumed. This period is called the Younger Dryas, after a hardy Arctic flower, Dryas octopetala, whose pollen appears abundantly in sediments from this time, indicating a return to near glacial conditions. For decades, geologists debated what caused the Younger Dryas. The leading hypothesis involved meltwater from retreating glaciers disrupting ocean currents. But some researchers proposed something more dramatic, a cosmic impact. In 2007, a team led by Richard Firestone published a paper proposing that a comet or asteroid struck North America approximately 12,900 years ago. The impact, or more likely multiple airbursts from a fragmenting comet, would have triggered massive wildfires across the continent. The smoke and soot injected into the atmosphere would have blocked sunlight, creating an impact winter. Temperatures would plummet. More controversially, the hypothesis suggested this event caused the extinction of North American megafauna, mammoths, mastodons, saber-toothed cats, and contributed to the disappearance of the Clovis culture, the earliest widespread archaeological culture in the Americas. The initial paper was highly controversial. Critics argued that several key lines of evidence were not reproducible. In 2011, a comprehensive review paper stated, "None of the original YD impact signatures have been subsequently corroborated by independent tests. The hypothesis appeared to be dead." But science rarely moves in straight lines. Over the past decade, multiple research teams have found new evidence supporting the impact hypothesis. In 2024, a team including Christopher Moore from the University of South Carolina and James Kennett from UC Santa Barbara published findings in the journal Airbursts and Cratering Impacts. They reported discovering platinum enrichment, microspherules, melt glass, and shock-fractured quartz at Younger Dryas boundary sites across the eastern United States, New Jersey, Maryland, South Carolina. These are precisely the signatures you would expect from cosmic airbursts. The shock-fractured quartz is particularly significant. Quartz crystals subjected to intense pressure and temperature develop characteristic fracture patterns. At major impact craters like the one at Chicxulub, which killed the dinosaurs, shocked quartz shows parallel planar fractures. But the Younger Dryas quartz shows a different pattern, web-like intersecting fractures. This is consistent with lower pressure airbursts rather than direct ground impacts. The comet didn't strike the Earth's surface. It exploded in the atmosphere at a relatively low altitude. The shockwave and heat pulse struck the ground, melting sediments, creating spherules of cooled molten droplets, fracturing quartz and igniting continent-spanning wildfires. This explains the lack of a large crater, one of the main criticisms of the hypothesis. Computer simulations have shown that a large comet fragmenting into thousands of pieces could produce exactly this pattern. Multiple airbursts distributed across a vast area. Catastrophic effects without a single obvious crater to mark the event. The evidence layer, called the Younger Dryas boundary, has now been identified at dozens of sites across multiple continents. It contains elevated levels of platinum, a rare element in Earth's crust but common in asteroids and comets. It contains nanodiamonds, which form under extreme pressure. It contains spherules of various compositions indicating melted material rapidly cooled, and crucially it dates precisely to 12,800 years ago. The margin of error in radiocarbon dating means all sites cluster at the same temporal boundary. Does this validate Sitchin's Nibiru? Absolutely not. There is no evidence connecting this event to a 300-year cycle, no evidence of Anunnaki intervention, no planetary body passing through the inner solar system. What likely happened is that Earth's orbit intersected a dense stream of cometary debris. The parent comet had fragmented, perhaps during a previous close pass to the Sun, creating a swarm of objects from house-sized chunks to fine dust. When Earth passed through this debris stream over perhaps a few days or weeks, the result was catastrophic. The largest fragments exploded in the atmosphere. Smaller ones burned up, creating brilliant fireballs. The thermal pulse ignited vegetation across vast areas. This is not ancient aliens. This is celestial mechanics and impact physics. But it does demonstrate something profound. The Earth is not safe. Cosmic catastrophe is not myth. It has happened. It can happen again. And when it happens, it can reset civilizations. The end of the Younger Dryas coincides with major transitions in human cultures. The Clovis points, the distinctive stone tools of North American Paleo-Indians, disappear from the archaeological record at precisely the Younger Dryas boundary. New tool technologies emerge after the Cold Period ends. In the Near East, the Younger Dryas corresponds to a temporary abandonment of settled agricultural villages, followed by their re-emergence in what archaeologists call the Neolithic Revolution. Some researchers, though this remains speculative and controversial, suggest the trauma of the Younger Dryas impact may have spurred technological and social innovation. Survivors needed new strategies to cope with a radically altered environment. This brings us to perhaps the most uncomfortable question. If a cosmic catastrophe struck 12,800 years ago, wiping out megafauna and disrupting human societies across the globe, would the survivors remember? How would they pass down that memory? They had no written language, they left no detailed historical records, but they had stories. And in cultures around the world, we find strikingly similar myths. Flood myths appear in over 500 different cultures. The biblical flood of Noah, the Mesopotamian flood of Utnapishtim and Atrahasis, the Greek flood of Deucalion, the Hindu flood of Manu, the Hopi emergence from the third world into the fourth. Nearly every ancient culture has a story of the world being destroyed and then renewed. Fire from the sky, walls of water, darkness, extinction, and then rebirth. Are these myths garbled memories of real events, or are they universal archetypes that emerge naturally from the human psyche as ways of understanding natural disasters? The debate continues, but geological and archaeological evidence increasingly suggests that the late Pleistocene was a genuinely catastrophic period. Perhaps our ancestors were trying to tell us something, not about ancient aliens or rogue planets, but about survival, about resilience, about the fragility of civilization in the face of cosmic forces beyond our control. Yet in the retelling, over millennia, the literal details were lost. The stories became mythology, the comet fragments became gods, the destruction became divine judgment. And in 1986, a journalist with a creative mind and questionable scholarship knit these myths together into a compelling narrative about extraterrestrial genetic engineers. He gave the ancient threat a name drawn from Babylonian astronomy, Nibiru. And that name caught fire. It spread through books and documentaries and early internet forums. It evolved and mutated. By the 1990s, a self-described psychic named Nancy Leader had merged Sitchin's Nibiru with her own channeled messages from alien greys. She predicted Nibiru would return and cause a pole shift catastrophe in 2003. When 2003 came and went without incident, the date was revised. It became 2012, the end of the Mayan long count calendar. An entirely separate piece of cultural mythology was grafted onto the Nibiru mythos. The result was a perfect storm of apocalyptic anticipation. The 2012 Nibiru cataclysm became a global phenomenon. Books were written, documentaries were filmed, internet searches for Nibiru spiked, and NASA found itself in the unprecedented position of having to directly address and debunk a conspiracy theory because people were genuinely terrified. David Morrison, then a senior scientist at NASA's Ames Research Center, reported receiving 20 to 25 emails per week about Nibiru. Many were from frightened individuals. Some were from parents worried about their children. A few were from people asking if they should commit suicide to escape the coming destruction. NASA launched a public outreach campaign. They published web pages systematically debunking every claim. They held video Q&A sessions. They explained that if a planet-sized object were approaching Earth on a collision course for December 2012, it would already be one of the brightest objects in the night sky. Every amateur astronomer on Earth would have spotted it years earlier. They explained that such an object would have already created measurable gravitational perturbations in the orbits of the planets, which had not occurred. They explained that the Mayan calendar does not predict an apocalypse. It simply marks the end of one long count cycle and the beginning of another, like our calendar rolling over from December 31st to January 1st. December 23rd, 2012 arrived. The sun rose, the sun set. No planet appeared in the sky. No catastrophic earthquakes or floods occurred. Nibiru did not arrive. For most people, this was the end of the story. The apocalypse that never was. But for true believers, the narrative simply evolved. The date was miscalculated. Or benevolent aliens intervened. Or the government used secret technology to deflect Nibiru. Or it is still coming, just delayed. This is the nature of unfalsifiable belief. When reality contradicts the prophecy, reality must be reinterpreted. And this is where we must step back and examine not just the facts, but what this entire cultural phenomenon reveals about us. About how we process uncertainty. About our need for narratives that give meaning to existence. About the way misinformation spreads in an age of infinite connectivity. The Nibiru myth is a case study in motivated reasoning. It demonstrates how genuine scientific mysteries, Planet 9, authentic historical catastrophes, the Younger Dryas event, and fragments of real ancient texts, Babylonian astronomy, can be woven together with mistranslations, misidentifications, and creative interpretation to produce a compelling but false narrative. It shows how conspiracy thinking fills gaps in knowledge not with rigorous investigation but with assumptions of cover-up and hidden truth. And crucially, it reveals the psychological comfort some people find in apocalyptic thinking. If the world is going to end through forces beyond our control, Nibiru, cosmic cycles, divine judgment, then individual responsibility diminishes. Climate change is not our fault. Social collapse is not preventable. We are not failing. We are victims of cosmic destiny. This is oddly reassuring to some minds, but it is also deeply disempowering, because it removes agency. If Nibiru is coming nothing, we do matters. If ancient astronauts engineered us as slaves, our achievements are not truly ours. If the cycle of catastrophe is inevitable, why try to build a better future? This is perhaps the most insidious aspect of the Nibiru myth. Not that it's false, but that belief in it can paralyze action and critical thinking. Yet there is another way to understand this story, a way that honours both our need for meaning and our capacity for reason. We live in a cosmos that is indeed vast and often indifferent, but we also live in a cosmos that can be understood through observation and mathematics. The ancient Babylonians were not primitive superstitious fools. They were brilliant astronomers who mapped the heavens with astonishing precision, using only their eyes and simple instruments. They created mathematical models of planetary motion that would not be surpassed for over 1,000 years. When they spoke of Nibiru as the celestial regulator, they were describing Jupiter's role in the gravitational architecture of the solar system. Modern astrophysics confirms that Jupiter, with its immense mass, does indeed act as a gravitational shepherd. It clears debris from the inner solar system. It shapes the asteroid belt. It influences the orbits of comets. In a very real sense, Jupiter is our cosmic protector. Had the Babylonians known about gravitational physics, they would have recognized this role. They intuited it and gave it a name. Nibiru, the crossing point, the stabilizer. This is not alien knowledge. This is human knowledge, hard-won through patient observation over generations. Similarly, the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, if it continues to be supported by evidence, tells us something empowering, not disempowering. It tells us that catastrophic cosmic events are not mythological. They are real. They have shaped Earth's history. They will happen again. But knowing this, we can prepare. We can build detection systems. We can develop deflection technologies. We already are. NASA's DART mission successfully altered the orbit of an asteroid in 2022. It was a test, a proof of concept. Humanity now has the technological capability to protect itself from certain classes of cosmic threat. This is extraordinary. Our ancestors could only watch the sky and tell stories. We can act. And the search for Planet 9, if it exists, is not a validation of ancient astronaut theories. It is a demonstration of the power of mathematical physics and observational astronomy. Batygin and Brown did not consult clay tablets. They analysed orbits. They ran simulations. They made testable predictions. When telescopes search for Planet 9, they are doing science. And when they find it, or conclusively rule it out, that will also be science. This is the real story of Nibiru. Not a tale of hidden planets and returning gods, but a story of how myth evolves. How legitimate ancient astronomy was misunderstood and repackaged as alien visitation. How real cosmic threats were transformed into apocalyptic prophecies. How the human need for meaning can override critical thinking. And how ultimately science offers a better way forward. Not certainty, science rarely provides absolute certainty, but a method, a process, a way of testing ideas against reality. You are lying in the dark now, the weight of this story settling upon you like a blanket. Perhaps you came here expecting validation of ancient mysteries. Perhaps you came expecting absolute debunking. What you have received is more complex. The truth that Nibiru, as described by Sitchin, does not exist. The truth that the Babylonian Nibiru was something quite different. The truth that Earth has suffered cosmic catastrophes in the past. The truth that there may indeed be a hidden planet in our solar system, but it is not the Nibiru of myth. And perhaps most importantly, the truth that our need for meaning and narrative is so powerful it can twist scattered facts into elaborate stories that feel real, even when they are not. But you have also received something else. A reminder that human beings have been watching the stars for thousands of years, that our ancestors were not fools, they were observers and thinkers who lacked our tools, but not our intelligence. That the universe is vast and strange and sometimes dangerous. That catastrophe is possible, but also that knowledge is power. That understanding the cosmos through patient observation and rigorous thinking is humanity's greatest achievement, and that we can choose to face the future not with apocalyptic dread or wishful thinking about alien saviours, but with clear eyes and determination to protect the only home we have ever known. The Babylonian astronomers who named Nibiru would have understood this. They mapped the heavens not to predict the end times, but to understand the cosmic order, to know when to plant crops, when to hold festivals, when to expect eclipses. They were practical, they were brilliant, and in their own way they were doing exactly what modern astronomers do, trying to understand our place in the cosmos. So as you drift towards sleep, let this be the truth you carry. Nibiru, the planet of the ancient aliens, the harbinger of catastrophe, the 3600-year cycle of destruction. This Nibiru is a myth, a modern myth built on mistranslation and misunderstanding and a very human hunger for meaning. But Nibiru, the crossing point, the celestial regulator, the term for Jupiter in its role as cosmic shepherd, this Nibiru was real. It was humanity's first attempt to understand gravitational architecture before we knew what gravity was, and that is far more interesting than any ancient astronaut theory, because it means that everything we have achieved, every bit of knowledge we have gained, every step we have taken toward understanding the universe, we did it ourselves. No alien intervention required, no hidden knowledge, just human beings looking up at the sky, generation after generation, and slowly, patiently figuring it out. But before we reach the end of this journey, we must walk one more path. We must understand who the Anunnaki actually were in the original ancient texts. Not Sitchin's genetic engineers, but the gods as the Sumerians and Babylonians themselves understood them. Because this matters. Not just for historical accuracy, but because it reveals something profound about human culture and how we project our present concerns onto the past. Transport yourself back to ancient Mesopotamia, not to a spaceport, not to a genetic laboratory, to a temple complex in the city of Nippur around 2500 BCE. You are a scribe. Your stylus is a cut reed. Your writing surface is soft clay formed into a flat rectangle. Your task is to record the sacred traditions, the lists of the gods, the myths that explain why the world is the way it is. You begin with Anu, the sky god, the distant patriarch who reigns from the highest heaven. His name literally means sky or heaven in Sumerian. He is remote. He does not often intervene directly in human affairs, but he is the source of all divine authority. His word is absolute. From Anu descends the great gods who actively govern the cosmos. Enlil, lord of the wind and storm, who resides in Nippur, the religious heart of Sumer. Enlil is powerful, sometimes stern, the executor of divine justice. Enki, also called Ea, lord of the subterranean waters, the Abzu, god of wisdom, crafts and magic. Enki is clever, often sympathetic to humanity, and there are others. Nana the moon god, Utu the sun god, Inanna the goddess of love and war. These are the great gods of heaven and earth. And then there are the Anunnaki. The term appears in countless cuneiform texts from multiple periods and multiple city-states. Its consistent meaning across this literature is princely offspring or those of royal blood. The Anunnaki are the children and grandchildren of Anu. They form the divine council, the assembly that makes cosmic decisions. In Sumerian mythology, they are judges. They determine fates. They maintain cosmic order. They witness oaths and punish transgressions. But they are not a unified group of alien miners. They are a pantheon, a divine bureaucracy with competing interests, family rivalries, regional variations. Different cities emphasize different members of the Anunnaki based on which god was their patron. In Nippur, Enlil dominated. In Eridu, Enki was supreme. In Uruk, Inanna held sway. The myths reflect political realities. When one city conquered another, its gods were elevated in the pantheon. This is not aliens establishing bases. This is human culture working out power relationships through religious narrative. The creation of humanity in authentic Mesopotamian texts is indeed a central myth. But it looks nothing like Sitchin's version. The most complete account appears in the Atrahasis epic, a Babylonian text dating to around 1700 BCE but based on earlier Sumerian traditions. The story begins not with a failing atmosphere on a distant planet, but with divine labour disputes. The great gods, the Anunnaki, assigned the lesser gods, the Igigi, to do all the manual labour, digging irrigation canals, building cities. backbreaking work that went on for millennia. Finally, the Agigi rebel. They burn their tools and surround Enlil's house. There is a crisis in the divine realm. The cosmic order is breaking down. Enki proposes a solution. Create a new being to do the work. A Lulu, a primitive worker. The mother goddess, Belet Ili, takes clay from the Absu and mixes it with the blood and flesh of a slain god, Wi'ila, who possessed Teamu, intelligence or understanding. From this mixture she fashions 14 pieces, 7 for males and 7 for females. She implants them in the wombs of birth goddesses. After the designated time, the first humans are born. This is a profound myth. But what does it mean? To the ancient Mesopotamians it explained human nature. We are made of earth, clay, the material world. But we also contain a divine spark, the blood of Wi'ila, which gives us intelligence and the ability to understand the gods. Our purpose in this worldview is service. We grow food, build temples, make offerings, but this is not slavery in the modern sense. It is the fundamental structure of the cosmos. Humans serve gods, kings serve the divine order. Everyone has a place. The myth legitimizes the social hierarchy. It explains suffering, we labour because that is what we were made to do, and it connects humanity to divinity. We are not animals. We have divine essence within us. This is theology, this is cosmology. This is humans making sense of their existence using the conceptual frameworks available to them. To read this as a literal account of genetic engineering is to strip it of its actual cultural meaning and replace it with our modern obsessions, technology, genetics, extraterrestrial life. The flood myth in Mesopotamian literature provides another crucial example. The atrahasis continues with Enlil becoming annoyed by human noise and overpopulation. He attempts various solutions: plague, drought, famine. But Enki keeps thwarting him, teaching humans how to survive. Finally, Enlil decrees a great flood to wipe out humanity entirely. The gods take an oath not to warn any human. But Enki, ever the trickster, finds a loophole. He speaks to a reed wall, ostensibly talking to himself, knowing that his faithful servant Atrahasis is listening on the other side. He gives detailed instructions for building a boat. He specifies its dimensions. He tells Atrahasis to load his family, craftsmen and animals. The flood comes. It is so terrible even the gods are frightened, cowering in the highest heaven like dogs. When the waters recede, Atrahasis emerges and makes a sacrifice. The gods, who have been without offerings for days, gather around the smoke like flies. Enlil is furious that anyone survived, but Enki argues that wholesale destruction was excessive. Better to use measured population control, disease, accidents, infertility. This myth was later adapted into the flood story in the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the survivor is called Utnapishtim, and from there it influenced the biblical narrative of Noah. This is documented cultural transmission, not hidden alien history. What does the flood myth actually tell us? It expresses anxiety about divine anger and human vulnerability. It explains why population levels remain stable rather than growing exponentially. It presents Enki as a protector god who cares about his creations, and it establishes the Mesopotamian understanding that the gods need humans. Without us, they have no one to feed them, symbolically through offerings. This creates a mutual dependence. We are not just slaves. We are partners in maintaining cosmic order. Again, this is sophisticated theology. To reduce it to alien atmospheric engineering is to miss everything that made it meaningful to the people who created and preserved these stories for thousands of years. Now consider the astronomical achievements of these same people. The Babylonians did not need extraterrestrial instruction to become master astronomers. They developed their skills through centuries of patient observation. They understood that the planets, which they called Bibu or wandering stars, moved against the fixed background of the constellations. They tracked these movements with extraordinary precision. The Mol Lerpin, a comprehensive star catalogue compiled around 1000 BCE, lists constellations, star rising times, and planetary phenomena. It describes how to use the stars to mark seasons and regulate the agricultural calendar. It identifies Jupiter, Venus, Mars, Mercury, and Saturn, noting their brightness, colour, and typical motions. The Babylonians discovered the Saros cycle, a period of approximately 18 years after which eclipses repeat in predictable patterns. This allowed them to predict solar and lunar eclipses decades in advance. They developed mathematical models of planetary motion that used arithmetic sequences to approximate non-uniform velocities as planets moved along their orbits. By the Seleucid period, roughly 300 BCE to 100 CE, Babylonian astronomical texts had become extraordinarily sophisticated. They could predict the positions of planets to within a degree. They understood synodic periods, the time between successive oppositions or conjunctions of planets with the Sun. They created ephemerides, tables listing planetary positions for months or years into the future. All of this was accomplished without the telescopes, without computers, without alien intervention. Just human intelligence applied systematically to the problem of understanding the heavens. The Babylonians knew 5 planets visible to the naked eye and assigned them to their major deities. Jupiter was Marduk, Venus was Ishtar, Mars was Nergal, Saturn was Ninurta, Mercury was Nabu. These associations appear consistently across hundreds of astronomical and astrological texts. This is established fact, not controversial interpretation. When they wrote about Nibiru in astronomical context, they were writing about Jupiter fulfilling specific astronomical criteria, appearing at the equinox, crossing the celestial equator, not about a hidden planet on an impossible orbit. The sophistication of Babylonian mathematics deserves particular attention. They used a sexagesimal base 60 number system. We still use it today. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle. This system was brilliantly suited for astronomical calculations because 60 has many divisors, making fractions easier to work with. They could perform complex arithmetic, including square roots and cubic equations. They created multiplication tables, reciprocal tables, and problem texts that demonstrate mathematical reasoning that wouldn't be matched in Europe until the Renaissance. The astronomical diaries, a series of tablets recording daily astronomical observations for centuries, represent perhaps the longest-running scientific research program in human history. These observations were used to refine mathematical models, to test predictions, to accumulate data across generations. This is science. This is the scientific method in embryonic form. To claim these people needed alien tutors is to fundamentally misunderstand what they achieved and how they achieved it. Let us turn now to the modern cultural impact of the Nibiru myth, because understanding how this idea spread reveals as much about our current moment as anything about ancient history. Sitchin's books began circulating in the 70s and 1980s, gaining a dedicated following but remaining somewhat fringe. The real explosion came with the internet. In the early 2000s, websites, forums, and email chains spread the Nibiru theory exponentially. It merged with other conspiracy theories: New Age spirituality, 2012, Mayan apocalypse predictions, government cover-up narratives. By 2012, the myth had achieved global penetration. People in dozens of countries were discussing Nibiru. Some were true believers. Many more were casually curious. The phenomenon demonstrated how information and misinformation spread in the digital age. A compelling narrative with dramatic claims can outpace fact-checking. It can create self-reinforcing communities where dissent is dismissed as closed-mindedness or evidence of being brainwashed by mainstream science. After 2012 passed without incident, you might expect the theory to collapse. Instead, it evolved. Some believers admitted they had been wrong about the date, but not the core premise. Others shifted to new dates: 2017, 2020, 2004. Each failed prediction is explained away. The math was off. The government intervened. Nibiru is still coming, just not yet. This demonstrates a psychological principle called cognitive dissonance. When strongly held beliefs are contradicted by reality, believers don't abandon the belief. They modify it to accommodate the contradiction. This is not unique to Nibiru. It appears in failed doomsday cults throughout history, in prophecies that don't come true, in political predictions that miss the mark. Humans are exceptionally good at maintaining beliefs in the face of contradictory evidence. We reinterpret the evidence. We question the sources. We find new reasons why we were almost right and just need to adjust the details. The Nibiru phenomenon has also been financially lucrative. Sitchin's books generated millions in sales. Countless other authors have published variations on the theme. Ancient Aliens, the History Channel television series that has run for over 180 episodes, features Nibiru prominently. Giorgio Tsoukalos, the show's most recognizable personality with his distinctive hair, has become an icon of ancient astronaut theory. The show presents Sitchin's ideas alongside other speculative theories about ancient engineering, UFOs, and hidden history. Critics point out that the show uses leading questions, could it be the ancient astronauts, cherry-picks evidence, and presents fringe theories as equivalent to mainstream scholarship. But it is undeniably entertaining. And entertainment has its own power. It shapes perceptions. For many viewers, especially younger ones, ancient aliens may be their primary exposure to ancient history. If the show says Sumerian texts describe spaceships, many will believe it without checking actual Sumerian scholarship. This raises ethical questions about media responsibility. Does a television show have an obligation to present accurate history? Or is it enough to entertain and let viewers decide for themselves? The problem is that viewers often lack the tools to evaluate claims about ancient languages, astronomical data, and archaeological context. They trust that what they're seeing has been fact-checked. Often it has not. The scientific community has struggled with how to respond to the Nibiru phenomenon. Engaging with pseudoscience gives it attention and potentially legitimizes it. Ignoring it allows misinformation to spread unchecked. NASA chose to engage. David Morrison's work debunking Nibiru included not just web pages, but personal responses to thousands of worried individuals. In interviews, he expressed frustration that resources were being diverted from real science to address fears based on complete fiction. Other astronomers took different approaches. Phil Platt, the Bad Astronomy blogger, used humour and clear explanations to debunk astronomical misconceptions, including Nibiru. Neil deGrasse Tyson addressed it in public lectures, emphasising that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence and Nibiru had none. But the myth persists. Why? Partly because belief is not purely rational, it involves identity, community, and emotional satisfaction. For some people, believing in Nibiru makes them feel like they possess special knowledge. They see through the lies that deceive ordinary people. This is empowering. It creates an in-group of the awakened versus an out-group of the sheep. Questioning Nibiru becomes questioning your place in that community. It means admitting you might have been wrong, that the time and energy invested in researching the theory was wasted. These are psychologically costly admissions. There is also a darker current worth acknowledging. Some versions of the Nibiru myth are entangled with anti-Semitism. Ancient astronaut theories sometimes merge with conspiracy theories about global elites, secret societies, and hidden knowledge. When these narratives identify specific ethnic or religious groups as the inheritors of alien technology or as gatekeepers of forbidden wisdom, they can veer into hateful territory. This is not universal among Nibiru believers, but it is present in enough corners of the movement to be concerning. Conspiracy theories throughout history have often targeted marginalized groups. The Nibiru myth, when it invokes shadowy cabals controlling governments and suppressing truth, can become a vehicle for much older prejudices. This is another reason scientists and educators have felt compelled to push back. The stakes are not just about getting ancient history right, they are about combating the broader erosion of critical thinking and the normalization of conspiracy logic. Yet we must also ask what legitimate human needs the Nibiru myth might be addressing. People who believe these theories are not all irrational or uneducated. Some are highly intelligent. They are seeking answers to real questions. Why does the world feel so chaotic? Why do institutions seem untrustworthy? Why does modern life feel spiritually empty? The Nibiru narrative provides answers. The chaos is part of a cosmic cycle. The untrustworthiness is because those in power know the truth and are hiding it. The emptiness is because we have forgotten our true origins. These answers may be wrong, but they are attempting to address genuine human concerns. Perhaps the real failure is that mainstream institutions, science, education, media have not done enough to provide compelling alternative narratives. Science tells us we are the products of billions of years of evolution, that the universe is vast and indifferent, that meaning is something we create for ourselves. This is intellectually honest. But it is not emotionally satisfying for everyone. It does not provide the sense of cosmic purpose that religion traditionally offered. And as traditional religion declines in many parts of the world, alternative meaning systems rush in to fill the void. Ancient astronaut theories are one such system. They offer a creation myth for the scientific age. Instead of God creating Adam from clay, aliens create humans through genetic engineering. Same story structure, different vocabulary. What would a constructive response look like? First, acknowledging that the questions people are asking when they turn to Nibiru theories are often valid questions. Who are we? Why are we here? What is our place in the cosmos? These are profound philosophical and existential questions. Science can inform our answers, but cannot provide complete answers by itself. Second, making authentic ancient history more accessible and more compelling. The real Sumerians were extraordinary. Their actual achievements, writing, mathematics, astronomy, law, literature, are fascinating. If people understood what was really happening in Mesopotamia 4,000 years ago, they might find it more interesting than Sitchin's fiction. Third, improving science communication. When NASA says Planet 9 might exist, they need to clearly distinguish this from Nibiru. When archaeologists discuss catastrophic events like the Younger Dryas, they need to separate evidence-based hypotheses from unfounded speculation. This requires patience, clarity, and accessibility. Scientists cannot simply dismiss popular ideas as stupid. They must engage with why people find those ideas appealing and offer alternatives that are equally engaging but grounded in evidence. Yet even as we recover this understanding, when we learn to read ancient texts on their own terms rather than imposing our categories onto them, a richer picture emerges. The Sumerians and Babylonians were extraordinarily creative, intellectually sophisticated people. They invented writing not once, but developed it gradually over centuries from counting marks to full linguistic expression. They created legal codes that balanced justice with mercy. They composed poetry that still moves readers today. The Epic of Gilgamesh, with its meditation on mortality and friendship and the meaning of human life, resonates as powerfully now as it did 4,000 years ago. They built cities and irrigation systems. They established long-distance trade networks. They pondered the nature of the divine and humanity's place in the cosmos. They did all of this themselves. They did not need extraterrestrial intervention. To suggest otherwise is not to elevate them. It is to diminish them. It is to say their achievements were not really theirs, that the glory belongs to aliens who used them as tools. This is profoundly disrespectful to the memory of actual human beings who accomplished extraordinary things under difficult conditions with limited resources. We honour them not by rewriting their history as alien contact, but by understanding and appreciating what they actually did. Now let us explore one final dimension of this story, the dimension of human psychology and what the Nibiru phenomenon reveals about how we process information, form beliefs, and construct meaning in an age of information overload and institutional distrust. The past 2 decades have witnessed a dramatic shift in how people access information and form worldviews. Traditional gatekeepers, newspapers, academic institutions, government agencies have lost much of their authority. The internet has democratized information access, but also made it nearly impossible to distinguish reliable sources from unreliable ones. Anyone can publish anything. A well-designed website presenting pseudoscience can look identical to a well-designed website presenting peer-reviewed research. Without expert knowledge to evaluate claims, how does an ordinary person decide what to believe? Often they rely on intuition and what feels true. They trust sources that align with their existing beliefs. They are drawn to narratives that provide emotional satisfaction. And the Nibiru myth provides enormous emotional satisfaction. It is dramatic. It is exciting. It promises hidden knowledge. It positions believers as the enlightened few who see through official lies. This is psychologically rewarding in ways that reading a dry academic paper about Babylonian astronomy simply is not. Social media has amplified these effects exponentially. Algorithms designed to maximize engagement preferentially show people content that confirms their existing beliefs. If you click on one video about Nibiru, the algorithm will recommend 10 more. Soon your entire feed is ancient astronaut content. You encounter the same claims repeated over and over by different sources. This repetition creates the illusion of consensus. If dozens of videos and websites all say the same thing, surely there must be something to it. This is the information bubble in action. And breaking out of it requires active effort. You must deliberately seek out opposing viewpoints. You must be willing to consider that what felt true might be wrong. This is cognitively difficult and emotionally uncomfortable. Most people don't do it. They stay in the bubble where their beliefs are continually reinforced. This is not unique to Nibiru believers. It affects people across the political and ideological spectrum. But it explains why debunking efforts often fail. You cannot fact-check someone out of a belief they didn't fact-check themselves into. Belief is not primarily about evidence. It is about identity, community and emotional needs. Understanding this helps us respond more effectively. Instead of mocking or dismissing people who believe in Nibiru, we can ask what needs that belief is fulfilling. Often it is providing a sense of specialness, of being in on a secret, of being smarter than the mainstream. It is providing community with like-minded individuals who validate each other. It is providing a narrative framework that makes sense of a confusing world. These are real human needs, and simply presenting contrary evidence does not address them. A more effective approach might be to offer alternative ways of fulfilling those needs. Show that mainstream science is actually full of mysteries and unsolved questions. That being a scientist or science enthusiast means being part of a community asking profound questions about the nature of reality. That understanding genuine astronomy and history provides genuine wonder and specialness because you are engaging with the real universe, not a fictional version of it. This is a harder sell than conspiracy theories because it requires more cognitive effort. Real science is complex. It does not offer simple answers. It requires accepting uncertainty and revising beliefs when new evidence emerges. But for those willing to make that effort, the rewards are greater. You're learning about the actual cosmos. You're engaging with real human history. You're part of a tradition stretching back to those Babylonian astronomers we have been discussing. You are a skywatcher, an asker of questions, a seeker of truth. Not the Hollywood version of truth with secret bases and government cover-ups, but the harder, stranger, more interesting truth that emerges from patient observation and rigorous thinking. There is also a generational dimension worth considering. Many young people are encountering ancient history and astronomy primarily through sources like Ancient Aliens, rather than through formal education. If school curricula present history as boring lists of dates and battles, while YouTube presents it as exciting mysteries involving aliens and lost civilizations, which version will capture imaginations? This suggests that educators need to radically rethink how they present these subjects. Ancient history should be taught as detective work, as the reconstruction of lost worlds through fragmentary evidence, as a story about human ingenuity and achievement. Astronomy should be taught as humanity's greatest adventure, as our species' quest to understand our place in an incomprehensibly vast cosmos. If students learned it this way, the real version might compete effectively with the fiction. But this requires resources, training, and a willingness to make education engaging rather than just checking boxes on standardized tests. These are systemic issues that go far beyond the Nibiru myth, but are deeply connected to why that myth persists. Let us also consider what role wonder plays in all of this. Children are natural scientists. They ask endless questions. Why is the sky blue? Where do stars come from? How big is the universe? They are filled with wonder at the world. But often that wonder is crushed by educational systems that emphasize rote memorization over inquiry. By the time students reach adulthood, many have lost that sense of wonder. They find the universe explained by science to be boring or depressing. It tells them they are insignificant. That consciousness is just brain chemistry, that life has no inherent meaning. When someone comes along and says, "No, you are special, you were created for a purpose by advanced beings, there is a grand cosmic drama and you are part of it," that is immensely appealing. It restores wonder. But it does so through fiction. The real challenge is to restore wonder through truth, to show that being made of stardust, literally, every atom in our bodies heavier than hydrogen was forged in stellar furnaces, is more amazing than being made by aliens. That evolving through billions of years of natural selection from simple replicating molecules to conscious beings who can contemplate the universe is more miraculous than being engineered in a laboratory. That the real cosmos with its black holes and neutron stars, its dark matter and dark energy, its expansion and its deep time, is stranger than any myth. This is the wonder that science offers. It is not always easy to grasp. It requires learning some physics, some chemistry, some biology. But for those who make the effort, it provides a sense of cosmic connection that is grounded in reality rather than wishful thinking. Now, as we approach the conclusion of this long journey through myth and science, through Babylonian astronomy and modern astrophysics, through Sitchin's fiction and legitimate scholarship, let us synthesize what we have learned. Nibiru as a term appears in ancient Babylonian astronomical texts. Its meaning was crossing point or ferry. It most commonly referred to the planet Jupiter in specific astronomical contexts, particularly when Jupiter crossed the celestial equator at the equinox. It was associated with the god Marduk and represented cosmic order and stability. This is well-established scholarship, not controversial interpretation. The idea that Nibiru is a hidden planet on a 3,600-year elliptical orbit, inhabited by alien beings who created humanity through genetic engineering, appears for the first time in Zecharia Sitchin's 1976 book, The 12th Planet. Sitchin's translations of ancient texts have been thoroughly debunked by the scholars who actually read Sumerian and Akkadian. His interpretations are based on mistranslations, cherry-picked evidence, and a predetermined narrative of ancient astronauts. The archaeological and linguistic evidence does not support his claims. The Anunnaki were Mesopotamian gods, deities, not extraterrestrials. The myths about them are theology and cosmology, not hidden history of alien genetic engineering. However, there is legitimate scientific evidence for a possible massive planet in the outer solar system. Planet 9, as proposed by Batygin and Brown, is based on gravitational evidence. The unusual clustering of extreme trans-Neptunian object orbits. The prediction has been tested multiple times, and each test has produced results consistent with a massive distant planet. But Planet 9, if it exists, has an orbit of 10,000 to 20,000 years, not 300. Never comes anywhere near Earth. Is a natural object likely captured or ejected into its current orbit billions of years ago. Is not Nibiru in any sense that ancient astronaut theorists would recognise. The search for Planet 9 is ongoing. The Vera Rubin Observatory may detect it within the next few years, or it may conclusively rule it out. Either way, we will learn something important about the architecture of our solar system. There is also legitimate scientific evidence that Earth suffered a major cosmic bombardment approximately 12,800 years ago. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis proposes that a fragmenting comet caused multiple airbursts across the northern hemisphere. This triggered wildfires, climatic cooling, and may have contributed to megafaunal extinctions and the disappearance of the Clovis culture. The evidence includes platinum enrichment, microspherules, melt glass, and shock-fractured quartz at Younger Dryas boundary sites. The hypothesis remains debated but is taken seriously by many researchers. This demonstrates that cosmic catastrophes are real. They have happened. They can happen again, but there is no evidence connecting this event to a 3,600-year cycle or to alien visitors. The persistence of the Nibiru myth, despite overwhelming contrary evidence, reveals important things about human psychology, about our need for meaning and purpose, about how conspiracy thinking fills gaps in knowledge with assumptions of cover-up rather than legitimate uncertainty, about how information bubbles and social media algorithms reinforce beliefs regardless of their truth value, about how distrust of institutions makes people vulnerable to alternative narratives. Understanding these psychological and sociological factors is as important as understanding the science, because the goal is not just to debunk false claims, but to understand why those claims resonate with millions of people and to offer better alternatives that fulfill the same human needs. The universe revealed by science is genuinely wondrous. Earth's history is genuinely dramatic. Humanity's achievements are genuinely impressive. We do not need to invent alien intervention to make our story interesting. It is interesting because it is true, because it is our story. The story of a species that evolved on a planet orbiting an average star and somehow developed the capacity to understand the cosmos, to map galaxies billions of light years away, to detect planets circling other suns, to find the echoes of the Big Bang itself in the cosmic microwave background. We did this, not aliens, not gods, humans, asking questions, building instruments, testing hypotheses, sharing up old knowledge across generations. This is the real epic, and you are part of it simply by wondering about the universe and seeking to understand it. That curiosity that led you to explore the Nibiru mystery is the same curiosity that drove the Babylonian astronomers who first named the crossing point. The same curiosity that drives scientists today searching for Planet 9. You're a skywatcher, an inheritor of that ancient tradition, and the sky has never been more full of genuine mysteries worth pondering. The search for Planet 9 continues. Perhaps we will find it. Perhaps we won't. But either way, we will know more than we did before, and that knowledge was not given to us by gods or aliens. We earned it, through observation, through mathematics, through the scientific method, through the same patient, careful attention to the heavens that the Babylonian astronomers practiced 4,000 years ago when they named the crossing point, when they named Nibiru. And what lies ahead? What new discoveries await us in the coming decades? The technological capabilities we now possess would seem like magic to those ancient astronomers. The Vera Rubin Observatory, with its ability to photograph the entire available sky repeatedly, will not just search for Planet 9, it will catalogue millions of objects we have never seen before. Asteroids, comets, trans-Neptunian objects, distant galaxies. The data it produces will keep astronomers busy for generations. The James Webb Space Telescope is peering into the atmospheres of exoplanets, planets circling other stars, searching for chemical signatures that might indicate life. We are on the verge of answering one of humanity's oldest questions. Are we alone? Within your lifetime, within the lifetime of anyone listening to these words, we may discover definitive evidence of life beyond Earth. Perhaps microbial life on Mars or beneath the ice of Europa. Perhaps biosignatures in the atmosphere of a distant world. Perhaps even, though this is far less likely, evidence of technological civilizations. If that day comes, if we finally confirm that life exists elsewhere in the universe, it will transform human consciousness. It will be a pivot point in our species' story. And it will happen not because ancient aliens told us, but because we searched, because we built the instruments, because we did the science. The night sky you see when you look up, assuming you can see it past the light pollution of modern cities, is the same sky the Babylonians saw. The same stars, the same planets. Though they move slowly through their courses over centuries and millennia, that continuity is profound. Human civilizations rise and fall, empires crumble, languages die, but the stars endure. And so does human curiosity. The questions we ask about the cosmos are the same questions asked 4,000 years ago. What are those lights in the sky? How do they move? What does it all mean? We have better answers now, but the questions remain eternal. And as long as humans exist, we will keep asking, keep observing, keep discovering. This is our nature. This is what makes us human. Not our DNA, which we share to a large degree with chimpanzees and bonobos, but our capacity for wonder, our drive to understand, our refusal to accept mystery as final. We are the species that looked at the stars and decided to visit them. We have sent probes to every planet in our solar system. We have landed rovers on Mars. We have placed a vehicle on a comet. We have sent spacecraft beyond the heliosphere into interstellar space. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 carry golden records with greetings from Earth. Not because we expect alien civilizations to find them, but because we wanted to make the statement. We were here, we wondered, we reached out. This is who we are. Let the stars wheel overhead in their eternal dance. Let Jupiter, the real Nibiru, maintain its gravitational watch over the inner solar system. Let the Vera Rubin Observatory prepare to map the sky in exquisite detail. Let the truth be what it is, complex, sometimes disappointing, often surprising, always worth pursuing. The universe does not need to be rewritten by ancient aliens to be wondrous. It is wondrous enough as it is. And you, descendant of countless generations of skywatchers, inherit that wonder. Not because genetic engineers created your ancestors in a laboratory, but because your ancestors created themselves. Through curiosity, through intelligence, through the refusal to stop asking questions. That is the real story. That is the truth about Nibiru. And now, with that truth settling like dust after a long journey, you can rest.